we're on.
We're back. We're back for a second episode. Incredible. We've been watching with Claire Woodward and David Stevenson. Amazing.
Yes, that difficult second episode, David.
It is. Shall we stop now while we can?
Yeah, well, while we're on top, why not?
How's your viewing week been then, Claire?
It's been quite interesting, actually. It was great to see John Sim back on the telly, on Grace on ITV, the adaptation of the Peter James novel, crime novels, because he looked older, and that was a shock to me, because this is a guy that's been in loads of, he's a bit of Britpop kind of actor, isn't he? And to see him take that older role as a maverick cop was really interesting.
I know, it was good, wasn't it? Because I always associate John Sim with Life on Mars, and that amazing title sequence in Life on Mars, where he goes and jumps off the roof. And I mean, I think that's what a lot of people feel anyway at the moment. So it took me ages to get that out of my head, really. But I love John Sim because he's quite a sort of understated actor, isn't he? He doesn't really do a lot, but he can be quite intense as well. I mean, if you wanted to cast an incredible thug, who didn't look like one, you'd cast John Sim, wouldn't you? I can imagine, he should have been in Trainspotting or something like that.
Well, absolutely, because he's of that generation of actors. But I mean, and I think it was really clever to cast him in this, because I would never see him as a policeman who goes to see a psychic, who does a bit of dowsing over a map. Normally in his past roles he'd be going, "Oh, hey, we're not having that." But in this, he's really believable, and as you say, understated. And it's another one from our favourite Russell Lewis, isn't it?
Yes, well done, Russell Lewis. We love him for Endeavour, Morse.
Yes,
everything really.
Everything really. And if you go and watch Grace again, about 10 minutes into the programme, you'll see on Grace's whiteboard of old cases, you'll see this cute little schoolboy picture of a boy in a grey jumper. I think that might be Russell Lewis as a boy.
Oh, really? I thought what you were going to say was Colin Dexter,
Yes, they brought Colin Dexter back from the dead just to appear. Well, funnily enough, I watched the first episode of Endeavour this week as well, and it was great to see Colin pop up in that. But our Russell is turning into a bit of a Hitchcock, because he's quite mysterious. There's no current pictures of him. The last one I could find online was when he was played young Winston in the film Young Winston.
Oh, right, interesting. Well, we must get him on the podcast. We will have some guests one day when we get going a little bit. I mean, because I'm noticing all our audience now, I can see there's some in America and there's someone in Greece who is listening. So there's a big, do we have a shout out on podcast?
We can have a shout out to my friend Maria in Greece. Hello, Maria.
Gosh, I've never seen any Greek television. I think we should review a Greek TV show. We'll find one during the week.
That's a great idea, actually. Well, there's the thing on London Live called My Greek Odyssey. I mean, London Live, which is the channel which presumably just signed up really cheap programs because it's got very little else to offer. But
it's also London Live is great to look at because it's in standard definition. So if you want to go back to what viewing was like 20 years ago before high definition, you sort of tune into London Live, don't you? I mean, you get to see programs as they were made in the time they were made as well.
That's really interesting, because I've only had my new TV for about 3 years. I had a cathode ray tube telly until that, so it's going to bring back those cathode ray memories, big style.
The other thing about Grace is I found it difficult to pick the culprit. I didn't pick the killer at all. I mean, obviously the stag do that went right or wrong, depending on your view. But I suppose if most of the people who are on the stag do die, it went wrong. But,
narrows it down a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I didn't pick her, the female serial killer who was attracted to property developers. I thought that was quite interesting. It's an interesting way to make a living, isn't it?
Yes, it was. I mean, attracted to property developers, that's quite specific. But no, you're right. And I do know a few people talking on Twitter and saying, they really hated the storyline of the guy being sort of buried alive in a coffin. And they said they switched off. And I thought, oh, that's quite, I've seen a lot worse on television. I don't know why people seemed a bit squeamish about it, but you know, he didn't die in the end. Spoiler alert. I just thought it was visceral, but it was just very interesting, and I really look forward to some future episodes of that and just see how Grace's character develops.
Yeah, absolutely.
He seemed to have a nice supporting cast, a la Unforgotten.
He had a sort of caring side as well to him, didn't he? I mean, he wasn't, and he had that classic thing. Of course, he didn't have a partner. She has mysteriously disappeared. I wonder if that's going to develop over the series or not. That was an interesting side to him, but at least he wasn't too depressed. I mean, the classic trope of the detective suffering from every single mental illness imaginable didn't really come into play. Although he was sort of borderline DCI Banks, I thought. Do you remember DCI Banks? Who I think he listened to too much jazz, don't you? I mean, that was what he...
Yeah, definitely. Nobody wants too much jazz, so it's just a terrible thing in general, isn't it? Too much jazz. Oh, terrible.
So what are we going to give? We'll give it a rating. I think it's probably 4.5 for me. I think, but just because
I agree, I concur. Yes, definitely 4.5 from me as well, because it just seemed the right amount of time as well. You know, it made 2 hours, it filled 2 hours, which sometimes those things don't, do they?
Yeah, we like 2-hour films, so more please, Russell Lewis. That's our conclusion now.
Yeah, as ever.
And on the other side, as they say, on BBC One was the conclusion of Bloodlands, which, I mean, I found this series quite incredible in every respect, particularly the whole thing of running around going, I am Goliath. No, you are Goliath. I am Goliath. I'm Goliath. I mean, it's the biggest catchphrase of the year as far as I'm concerned. Whether there was anything beyond it, I don't know. In terms of it, I mean, I was quite taken aback when they said they were coming back for a second series. I mean, James Nesbitt, I'll probably watch it. I would watch him reading the phone book. Really, he's got a great range and he's a great actor. But in the end, he didn't really. It was sort of unbelievable. You had this detective who's seeking out the truth, you know, trying every means possible to find a killer. But then he'd turn away and be a total psychopath, getting a gun out and starting to mow people down on a farm. I mean, it was too incredible to believe, I thought.
Well, I mean, you'll be surprised to hear I didn't actually watch this because I just thought I cannot take another police drama at the moment. The world is full of police dramas. And I like James Nesbitt being happy as opposed to James Nesbitt looking all grey and sullen and sunken faced. But from what you're saying, you know, the police elements maybe don't ring true. I mean, I do have a friend who's a fairly senior person in the Northern Ireland Police Service. And I did meet him once when he had a gun in his pocket. And I just said to him, have you got a gun in your pocket? And he said, oh, you're just pleased to see me. And he said, no, I've got a gun in my pocket. So he was a bit more careful about carrying his guns. But it just struck me that, you know, it's a Jed Mercurio series. He produced it, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or executive produced it. He didn't write it.
He was the showrunner, as it were. So yeah, he was reading it all along, I think. And there was a Jed Mercurio touch to it, wasn't it? When at the end of the second episode, it was the second episode, wasn't it? I mean, James Nesbitt's character Brannick just pulled out a gun and shot this guy, you know, and you thought, you're a policeman, you can't just shoot people, apparently. But apparently they did in this one. I just thought it was too bonkers. I mean, and you're absolutely right about firearms, but that's one of the attractions I thought of it for the people that were making it, because you can then have an American style cop who's got a gun in a holster and will take it out at any point and shoot someone. And I know that's a very cynical outlook on it, but I do think we love dramas with a lot of firearms action in it. And, you know, Line of Duty, we'll speak about that in time, but that has got, you know, it's full of sequences about firearms officers, and that's where the excitement, if you like that sort of drama, begins. So they were trying to borrow a bit of that. So I'd be amazed to see what happens in the second series. I mean, go on, surprise me.
Well, I mean, did you think it was a bit Line of Duty light, maybe?
It was a bit. It was like the entree. It was the warm-up act for Line of Duty. I mean, I don't think it was planned that they would run concurrently, back to back, but that's how it's turned out. I mean, it's great for Jed. I mean, he's, you know, if you're going to put a drama in anyone's hand, put it in his, but his sort of hallmarks, because we know his work so well, become a little bit too obvious to us. And I mean, you want a bit of subtlety to this. You don't, I mean, when James Nesbitt, when Brannick turns up at the farm, you know he's going to kill this woman, and then see he's going to kill the other guy as well. I mean, he just does. And then
all bets are off.
And then probably the police, the cavalry turns up and goes, oh yeah, we believe your story completely. But you're right, there's quite a bit of crime drama around at the moment, and we've got another 7 weeks coming up. We'll talk about next week towards the end of the podcast.
Towards the end. But maybe Jed should get back to writing something comedy like the Grimleys again, which I actually forgot that he'd written. Yeah. I think it might do him good, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, he writes irony well. I mean, with things like Cardiac Arrest were actually quite funny, but I'm quite sick, but I would sort of laugh at a hospital drama where others wouldn't. But Casualty is a comedy, isn't it?
It is, and we won't talk about the comedy idea we had, will we, David? Because it's very, very tasteless.
Yes, that's very tasteless and very sick. Let's move on. Well, one of the happiest shows of the week, definitely, was Alan Carr's Great Interior Design Masters. Was it great? I think was it called that? No, Interior Design Masters. I mean,
Interior Design Masters. Yes,
Masters. I mean, it's the last show I expected Alan Carr to be associated with. In fact, he was on the other channel that night as well, wasn't he? In DNA Journey. I don't know whether he called that. I didn't.
Absolutely everywhere. But don't you think, though? I mean, I think maybe one of the reasons he was cast is because Joe Lycett has been an absolute genius on the Sewing Bee.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're taking comedians or comedic presenters and putting them into what are essentially reality formats. I'm not talking down reality formats. Some of them are quite engaging, but this one I found, quite a bit of fun. I got into it. I've got into it over the weeks, and I think the final is on next week. And shock, I'll be vaguely interested in who wins it.
I didn't know you're interested in soft furnishings, David. This is fantastic. But
if I go into a Manchester department, I'm lost.
But Carr is, he's a very engaging guy, and I think it's nice to see comedians do something not more serious than stand-up, but just something a little more engaging. Because I was thinking this week about the Caroline Flack programme on Channel 4. And what was so interesting about Caroline was she was 40, and she was at that age for a female presenter where, can you carry on presenting Love Island, or do you have to move on? Whereas it's difficult for women like that to move on in presenting because they're light and fluffy, but there's always another younger person coming along. So I certainly got the impression she had a very difficult relationship with her job.
Yeah, absolutely. I listened in on a webinar with Caroline's mother and sister and the makers of that show, and it was absolutely fascinating, but it was equally depressing as well, because a lot about how she was, I'm sure this was in the film itself, addicted to her phone and couldn't put her phone down, literally put it down, which must have been absolutely awful. And she also, although she sought help, would go to a succession of different doctors because she didn't want anybody to find out how she felt, because she thought it would stop her getting work. That must have been a genuine fear that she had.
Well, bearing in mind, we were talking about Harry and Meghan last week, mental health is very much the byword. I suppose it is difficult if you're seen as having mental health issues because, you've got things like insurance coming into play. But she was a very much loved woman. But as I say, to me, it did point out, where does your career go from here as a TV host? Whereas at least all the comedians we're seeing on all these competitive making shows, they have careers anyway, and they're used because they're smart enough to deal with live work. They write their own material. So, these comics are clever people, and that's why they're in demand. All I can say is I know Channel 4 have got a making jewellery show coming up, and I don't think that's presented by a comedian.
Well, it's interesting. Did you get into the pottery show? I couldn't. I lasted 5 minutes on the pottery, the Great Pottery Throwdown. Good title. Sort of shame about the result, really. There's something a bit too slow about pottery. I know it's probably I mean, you don't sit there looking into a kiln for an hour. That'd be a nice BBC4 slow television show, wouldn't it?
Well, exactly. I mean, and it's okay if it's Grace and Perry making pots as well. Or, you know, what I really miss is middle-aged women on making pots on the Generation game. Really badly made pots with stuff flying everywhere. But I never got into Throwdown either. And it was a Sunday night thing, was it?
It was a Sunday night,
Yeah, and
8 o'clock.
I think it's too relaxed for Sunday night.
I mean, the whole thing about pottery is it relaxes you, doesn't it? I mean, you don't want, but we say that, and we've got things like the repair shop that relaxes me far too much. The lovely stories in it, and it's beautifully done as a TV show, but I find it just a bit too steady.
Yes, it is. You know, you do need a jolt occasionally, don't we? You know, maybe if someone brings a sex toy in that needs repairing, repair shop or something like that. This is my mother's dildo. Yes.
I mean, so next week the final of Interior Design Masters, and I mean, I think Siobhan is in it, the one who has a different coloured wig each week. I'm backing her just for sheer creativity. She seems like a force of nature to me.
Yeah, and she seems like a very nice lady. You know, she works, I think, in the health service. But I didn't like her dark ceiling this week in the cafeteria. It kind of spoilt the ambience for me. But you know, there's some proper characters in that, and it is. I think some way it seems gentler than the Sewing Bee. I don't know why.
I think they take a bit more time. I think the
Sewing Bee judges are quite waspish. You know, Esme and Patrick, they're a brilliant double act, and they just add to the Sewing Bee. Whereas I think, you know, interior design has to be carried more by the contestants and Alan Carr.
Yeah, interesting. He's great when he comes into the room, though. He's just so funny with the contestants. I loved it when he was sort of propping up against that bit of plywood, saying, "Oh, it's so strong" and everything. You know, I mean, absolutely brilliant. So I'm giving 5 stars to that. I think that's the best new reality show this year. There probably aren't that many to judge with it, but there will be as we go on in the year, though.
Yes, obviously. I mean, I'd give it 4 because I think the Sewing Bee is just got that little edge on it. But it's what we need at the moment, isn't it? It's nice, warm and cosy television.
Absolutely, television to cozy up to. Right, we're sailing along like a cruise liner full of holes, aren't we, really?
or like the Great Canal Journey on Channel 4, or what's it called now? I know it's got new presenters. It is called
Great Canal Journeys. Thing is, I think it's had a demotion now. It's gone from Channel 4 onto More 4. Unless I don't know my 4s from my Moors, but I mean, I only found it on More 4. Or is that a promotion? I don't understand. Which is upmarket a promotion or a demotion? That's
a very good point. Maybe people from Channel 4 would like to let us know what the difference is between More 4 and Channel 4. Yes, that's a very good thought.
I think it's slightly more upmarket, isn't it? Which would drive away most of the audience, frankly. But Channel 4 like to think of themselves as being incredibly upmarket anyway, don't they? The channel, a bit like BBC 2 used to be, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting because I mean, I think I'd like Channel 4 to tell me, why are they always repeating Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares? It's on all the time, constantly. I'm surprised the tape hasn't worn out. The show is at least 10 years old. You know, some of the restaurants in it have probably long closed. Some of the people featured in it are actually dead. I've looked this up.
Choked on their own cooking.
Yes, exactly. Oh, there was a terrible man that ran a thing called Burger Kitchen. He was Australian, strangely enough, David. He was the son of an Australian thug. But I'd really love to know, have they not got anything else to show? But I mean, if your Canal Journeys, maybe it suffered because it hasn't got Timothy West and his wife Prue on it anymore.
Well, they are the couple, and I think it was a shame they had to give it up, particularly Timothy West, who was just such an enthusiast and knew so much about it. Is it brilliant on TV when you do get somebody sort of unexpectedly knows a lot about a subject and they want to tell you everything about it? I mean, then you're completely taken in, aren't you?
Yes, it's so lovely, isn't it? When they want to share that information with you.
Yeah. Rather than some dilettante who knows absolutely nothing, which you get all the time on television, claiming to be an expert. Let's not get into experts though.
Yeah,
But
it's not doing it.
I really enjoyed this episode through Staffordshire, which we don't see a lot in travelogues. I wouldn't say underrepresented in travelogues. They can put that on the sign as you enter Staffordshire.
And the new presenters are Sheila Hancock and Giles Brandreth. And I think it's really nice to see people on it who are friends. You know, as opposed to, oh, let's find a cute older couple to do it. You know, these people are friends. And, you know, there was a certain amount of, you know, personal information in this as well. I mean, Sheila Hancock got Giles to confess that everything he was doing, he, you know, he said, I have to be happy all the time and I have to be on all the time. And he said, the reason I'm doing this is to please my father, who's been dead for many years. I thought that was very moving. And Sheila Hancock talked about her late husband, John Thor's collection of Clarice Cliff, where when they went to the Clarice Cliff's old home. So, you know, there was personal stuff in there, and it was just very sweet. And, you know, I've never seen Giles Brandreth, you know, so revelatory. It was very, very enjoyable. The countryside looks great too as well.
It is beautiful and green, isn't it? It is a green and pleasant land. Shocked to see, but it was incredibly green. It was almost a sort of lime green, wasn't it? I don't know. Is that the rainfall? Is that acid rain? Is it being coloured in?
Possibly, yeah, the potteries.
But no, I loved it. I loved Giles when he was talking. Was probably in the same conversation about how he almost of his own will makes himself jolly, because Sheila was talking about how you're just, you know, the jolliest person in the room. But he was suggesting that you can make, in an existential way, I can make myself jolly, you know, which, I mean, not everyone has, I think, the capability of doing that. But he, I think he's still naturally very funny, very witty. But I'm the jolliest person in the room seems to be his motto. And it makes for great television, though, even if we're all not capable of being incredibly jolly for every minute of our lives.
Maybe you should do a mental health program, how to be jolly or something like that. That's my pitch to Channel 4 for this week, to replace Gordon Ramsay's kitchen nightmares, how to be jolly with Giles Brandreth.
It did come to me as to why we have so much Gordon Ramsay, because I think Channel 4 likes swearing. I think, you know.
Okay.
I think they love shows in which I would say, if you did a survey as to how many swears there are on the main 5 channels, I think Channel 4 would be just stratospheric, to be frank. I mean, okay, we all like a little bit of swearing, but they really go for it. And Gordon Ramsay provides that instantly. You don't even need to say, can I have a little bit more swearing in this half hour, please, Gordon?
All bleeped out, though, of course, for daytime viewers' sensitive ears.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yes, that's anyway. We'll go Canal Journeys. We do like a lot, don't we? And we
yes, we like
to do
that.
more shows, definitely. 5 stars all round for Great Canal Journeys.
Yeah, 4 from me, because I'm fussy.
Right, it's time for the classic of the week. In fact, you don't need to look that hard to find a classic of the week, do you? Because Fawlty Towers, this week's choice, was on primetime BBC One. And in fact, I tweeted something. I thought, does anyone know anything about this new comedy on BBC One called Fawlty Towers? And a wag got back to me that John Cleese will be delighted because that's his residuals sorted out.
Oh yes, there's his interesting ex-wife's rent paid for the next 6 weeks, but it really stands up, doesn't it? How old is it now? Is it 1977? But it really stands up, and it still made me laugh like a drain even after all these years.
I know, Lord Melbury. I mean, all the isn't it interesting about the class stuff? You would think, oh God, we don't think about class. Class hasn't got any real relevance to us anymore. But you watch that and you realize, my God, all the jokes still work just as well now as they did then. All the Melbury stuff, you know, O'Reilly, the builder, rings in, you know, the Irish builder. It's a stereotype, but, you know, people instantly know where you are, what you're talking about. So I found that side. And then, of course, you've got Manuel there as well. I mean, I thought that even that didn't seem too dated to me. In fact, through a sort of Brexit prism, it seemed quite interesting as well, the way he was being treated by Fawlty. which is, you know, a classic comedy thing, isn't it? You know, there's almost sort of theatre of cruelty there, you know.
Yes, it's interesting what you say. It is utterly timeless. I mean, you know, even the fact that Basil and Sybil wear classic clothes. It's only the hotel that's really brown and dated, but anything else, you know, it is still so fresh and human.
Do you think if you went to Torquay, you could find a hotel like that with a major sitting in the breakfast room? God, wouldn't that be brilliant?
Yeah, if they haven't been done over by the hotel inspector or something like that. But I love the family in the bar that couldn't get a drink in this first episode. You know, a large whiskey and orange squash. You know, there's lines from Fawlty Towers that just pop into your head occasionally, isn't there? You know, like. All right, Sybil, give my regards to the Earth's core. It never ceases to make me laugh. But, you know, lest we forget, you know, this was written by John Cleese and Connie Booth. Yeah, and people forget that Connie's input, I think it probably brought it down a bit from his point of view and made it a bit more human.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point to make, because I think they concentrate. I remember listening to Cleese talk about concentrate a lot on the plotting. I think she had a lot to do with that as well. And I think there are great lines in it, but it's the fact there's such a tightly woven plot in it. This had a plot of basically a fraudster, didn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Police did. I mean, one of the more interesting appearances is it was Robin Ellis as the detective. Poldark, original Poldark turns up in
Poldark, yes.
Wonders of classic television now to see someone. We're sitting there for 5 minutes saying, God, I recognise that guy. Who is that? Who is that? You know, because he looked nothing like he did in Poldark. There was much more hair. I mean, he obviously was before Poldark, and then suddenly, my God, it's Robin Ellis.
Yeah, it didn't really have that. Oh, I think Bernard Cribbins appeared in it. He was a big name. Nicky Henson. I can't think of any other, you know, massive household names that appeared in Fawlty Towers. You know, because it was a real character-driven piece.
Yeah, and it wasn't that it was almost cancelled after the first series. I think it was, wasn't it? And BBC
due to lack of ratings, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that I don't even know how comedies develop now, to be honest. I think they don't develop, someone just bungs them on as quickly as possible just to see if they take it and if they get going. But I mean, they worked on the scripts, I know, quite lengthily for this, but it was just, as you say, timeless, and we shall revisit, and hopefully the German episode won't be too badly edited. I don't know whether they get censored and not mention the word German or something. It'd be interesting.
Oh, I mean, how can they do that? I mean, it's just so ridiculous, isn't it? But I mean, you know, it's funny that we're watching Fawlty Towers now, which is now BBC Two, now on BBC One. And I was looking at the ITV Hub the other day, which only has 8 comedies on it.
God, that is depressing. That's 8. They've probably only made, ITV's probably only made 8 comedies though.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, and they are things like Man About the House, George and Mildred, Plebs, which is the Roman sitcom. But honestly, 8 sitcoms. What does that say about the state of sitcom?
Mind you, George and Mildred, Man About the House, they could have an evening with those 2 sitcoms, I think, just about. George
and Mildred is still hilarious, I have to say. But I'd quite like to see something contemporary. But I mean, what was that sitcom ITV did set in the cafe with Brenda Blethyn?
Oh yeah, that's only recent. Then that's been recommissioned actually. I mean, I think.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, she's great at comedy, Brenda. But I think people love her more for Vera. So I'm not saying stick to Vera, but Vera is a fantastic show.
Stick to Vera.
Devote your time to Vera. No, but that was, I remember giving that the rocket actually, that cafe thing. I just needed more characters. I mean, it just depends. I suppose that sort of comedy is built on who's coming through the door. You know, you can't just have the postman turning up, can you? Oh God, you're here again.
Hello, it's the postman. You know, things like I noticed on BritBox this week, Big Train has gone up, yes. And I still think that I didn't watch it the first time around, and now I still think it's one of the most underrated sort of broken sketch comedies there's ever been. It's fantastic.
Well, it's great now, isn't it? Because these streaming opportunities through BritBox, iPlayer, and the like can bring back all these classics now, just in the way Spotify allows your children to find out who ELO are.
Yes, exactly. And every child, David, as we know, should know who ELO are.
Absolutely.
But,
so, do we give a rating to a classic? I mean, I mean, I remember I was stopped once at immigration coming into Australia, and I said, "Oh, you know, what do you do?" I said, "I'm a TV editor," and he said, "Oh, what's your favourite show?" And I said, "Fawlty Towers," and I don't think he'd actually heard of it. So I went into this lengthy explanation, and I think that's the only reason I got back into the country briefly. But anyway, there you are.
We love it anyway, and we just can't get enough of it. Oh, I know.
And now the important part, podcast listeners, the show everybody's been waiting for this year, apparently, which was stopped in the middle by COVID, like everything. Line of Duty is back. Are you excited, Claire? Are you despairing?
I am excited because I only started watching, the new one is series 6 or 7, is it? I only started watching Line of Duty in series 5, so obviously I started watching in the middle and I kind of had no idea of what was going on. So I went back during lockdown, watched it from the start. I think it helps, doesn't it? But I think the nation is genuinely thrilled at it coming back. And if we don't find out who H is, I will kill Jed Mercurio, frankly.
That's an interesting spin-off.
Yeah, so that's a promise, Jed. You heard it here first. But what can you tell us, David? You've seen the first episode. What can you tell us?
Well, there are 2 new characters. There's a Kelly MacDonald character and there's a new character in AC12. And they're both central to the 2 plots that run in it. I mean, all I would say about it, there is one good sequence to it. I can't say much about that either. They stop an armed robbery at one point. I think I can say that, and that's all very exciting. And the guns are out, as I was saying. I mean, there's more guns in this than the guns are never owned, to be frank. But Kelly MacDonald is fantastic. She heads up this murder unit, and of course, you know, you're immediately looking at the character going, God, well, is she dodgy? How dodgy is she? What's going on? And there's a couple of surprises along the way for her character. But I think it's a great performance by her. I mean, I'm trying to think of when I've seen her on the TV, like probably Boardwalk Empire, where she played the wife. I mean, she actually, at the launch, she talked about how she'd never watched Line of Duty because she'd done so much of Boardwalk Empire. I mean, so she'd not caught up with a lot of British culture. I mean, no one's ever called Line of Duty British culture before, so there you go. But yeah, plot-wise, that's about all I can say. And there are interesting things happening with Martin Constant's character as well. That's developed. Adrian Dunbar's fantastic as ever. You're just waiting for him to appear. I mean, he's sort of fantastic lilting accent. You're just drawn into it. He's really funny. I love Ted. So, I mean, they're all there. It feels a little bit like it's quite a steady episode in a sense. I can, the tension is building a little bit slower than some other premiere episodes of series, but it's 5 stars all the way. I mean, I think just the theme tune gets people excited now. If you hadn't played the theme tune anywhere, I don't know, it'd probably break up a riot. I imagine people would look around and say, "Where's the screen? I want to watch."
Well, we can have parties, Dave. We'll all be dancing to a theme tune from Line of Duty. It would be brilliant. But presumably, this is going out week by week. It's not going out as a box set. No,
and I think that's interesting. I mean, I think people would love to binge it. Frankly, people would just go right through it, wouldn't they? And I think when the show first went on Netflix, I think it did a lot to make it a worldwide hit, didn't it? Because people were doing that, and it stands up to that. I mean, what's great about this series is we've got a bonus episode, so there are 7 episodes. So in a sense, what I'm saying about the first episode, which feels a little bit more procedural and not as sort of heavily dramatic as it sometimes can be, I think he's not stretched it, but he's certainly got as much out of the plot as he can. The other thing he revealed at the launch was that he knows how the storyline of H will develop. He knows how that will conclude. So it'd be interesting if they say we get to the end of this series and there's H has not been resolved and he doesn't get another series. So I mean, of course, that won't happen. I mean, please tell me that won't happen, BBC. I'm sure there will be another series because he's so brilliant at eking out this fantastic storyline.
I think he has to give us something, though. I mean, you know, this is the thing. We want to find out who H is. And while the journey is amazing, there comes a point and it's just like, just tell us. But it's great that it's bringing back event television, isn't it? You know, stuff that you can't binge and stuff that, you know, it's a shame there's no water cooler anymore because hardly anybody's going into the office. So it's not water cooler television, it's social media television. Everybody will be discussing it on social media, weren't they? Tweeting as they go along.
Yeah, absolutely. A PR I talked to today about you know, how much the ratings would be, how big the ratings would be for it. Said it's one of these what they call destination shows. So people decide what they want to watch on TV now by these destination shows. So they go looking for these shows, or they hear about it, see it online, and then go to these shows rather than looking at a schedule. So, you know, we were speculating as to whether it'd get a bigger audience than Oprah with Meghan and Harry. I mean, of course, nothing will be as important as Oprah with Meghan and Harry, but oh, hang on. The first episode of Line of Duty will be more important now, in my view. But
my God, David, do you know who's H? It's Prince Harry.
That's it.
That's why he's gone to America. Right, you don't need to watch Line of Duty anymore. We've discovered who H is. Prince
H.
Now it all falls into place, etc. Yes.
And there are two other things worthy of mention next week. I've seen a new documentary, the first episode of a new documentary series about Churchill. The first episode is called Churchill Beginnings. And it's interesting. It's by an award-winning director whose name escapes me, but he's just picked up an Emmy. And the idea is to tell Churchill's story in the whole. So there are 6 episodes. And I think it does touch on the controversies about Churchill and his character, allegations of racism, and nationalism, and you can make up your own mind. So having come away from the first episode, I thought it was thought-provoking and really interesting, and I don't think I've seen a long-running documentary on Churchill.
But no, you're right about the Churchill thing, because I've never seen a full-length documentary, and with everyone talking about, you know, Churchill is still very much with us, isn't he? Like Kenneth Williams is, in a more political sense. When people can make their own minds up, that's fantastic. What channel is that on?
That's Channel 5, and it starts on Friday. That's well worth a watch. Another one worth mentioning is a documentary I haven't seen yet, a one-off documentary about Kate Garraway and her husband, Derek, and I imagine that will be probably as harrowing as it is interesting about his plight, which of course is tragic, but you know, all credit to her for letting the cameras in. I think they started filming, you know, right towards the beginning of his illness. So that's on Tuesday night on ITV.
He's quite remarkable, isn't he? You know, he's one of the longest patients that's had COVID, isn't he? And you know, I like Derek very much. You know, he was you know, he was a therapist, and I saw him as a patient, and I just think he's absolutely wonderful. And I just think it's very brave of Kate to do this. I mean, I don't know how she keeps going, frankly.
I think it's amazing that she's able to keep going on GMB and to do stories about COVID while at the same time having a tragedy play out in her own family. It's remarkable. And you're right, bravery is the absolute word for it. And there's only one other thing which is on tonight, which I can't say tonight because I don't know what day we're going up. This is ridiculous. Let's start.
It's just on.
Let's start again. It's all-star musicals. Now I haven't watched this, but one of the contributors to it is Robert Peston, who does a number from Guys and Dolls, "Luck Be a Lady" tonight. And I was thinking, God, you can't go around singing "Luck Be a Lady" tonight. Now you'd be arrested, wouldn't you?
Well, I've seen the photos of this, and I mean, would you ever think that Robert Peston would have a yen to sing a song from Guys and Dolls in public?
Well, he said he was said he was looking for some escapism, and I think he's probably found it, and he should go back into his bottle. Actually, no, he wants to still be taken seriously, which, if you're a political pundit and interviewer, is probably a good trait to have. So I recommend that one as well. And apart from Line of Duty, which would be the thing everybody would be talking about, that's a little bit of froth as well.
Yes, well, we can reconvene next week and talk about Line of Duty for quite a long time then, can't we? Is it the usual length episode, an hour?
It is, yeah, it is, yeah,
yes,
an hour. That should satisfy everybody then for another week until they can find a water cooler, or maybe at the end of the episode, everybody will go out of their front door and we'll have a clap to Jed Mercurio.
Brilliant idea, David. Let's do that. Let's have the nation clapping for Jed Mercurio.
Right, see you outside, everybody, on Sunday night. And thank you for listening.
Bye.
Till next week.